this done before the summer starts, and then it'll be time for summer stories. Yes. Oh, yes. I have been looking forward to this. Now that I have my webcam back up and running again. Oh yes, I have missed it. I have missed seeing this. Not really. Oh, no, you haven't either. Yes. Oh, the smell of a book. The smell of the pages. Oh, the feel of the book is great. Yes. Let's begin. Number 1. The Cross Shepherd. Dick wheeled his car out of the shed and got into the driving seat. It was a very nice little car, bright red with silver wheels, and he was very proud of it. It had room for him at the front and for one more rather small passenger. The car had a hooter and 2 lights in front that you could switch on. Dick worked it with pedals and could get along very fast indeed. He raced off down the lane at top speed. I'm going to see the lambs jumping about in the field, he called to his mother. I'll be back in good time for lunch. He was soon at the big field where the lambs played around the mother sheep. Dick loved to watch them, for they were really very funny. They sometimes jumped onto the top of their mothers, then the big sheep got angry and shook them off. Let me get closer. Yes. They sometimes... Sorry. Dick left his car outside the gate and climbed over into the field. The lambs knew him and came running up. Dick picked one up and cuddled it. Then a voice suddenly came over the field and made Dick jump. Put the lamb down and get out of the field. Dick put the lamb down quickly. He looked to see who was shouting, and he saw a bent old shepherd standing at the door of his hut on the other side of the field. The shepherd was waving a stick at Dick, as if he meant to hit him with it. I wasn't hurting the lamb, called Dick. I was only hugging it. You might drop it and break its leg, shouted back the cross shepherd. I haven't sat up all night long in the cold winter with my lambs, just to let a tiresome boy frighten them and hurt them. You get out of the field. You'll be leaving the gate open next and letting all the sheep into the road. Be off with you. I couldn't leave the gate open because I always climb over it, shouted back Dick. Now don't you stand there talking to me like that, said the old shepherd, and he took 2 or 3 steps across the field. Dick was really afraid of him, and he ran to the gate, climbed over it, and was soon in his car. He pedalled off down to the lanes of the hills, thinking that the old shepherd was a very horrid man. He drove his little car quite a long way, following the paths that ran over the hills. Then he began to feel hungry, so he knew it was time for his lunch. He pedalled back. It was mostly downhill, so he was soon able to take his feet off the hurrying pedals and put them on the little ledges inside the car, pretending that he really was driving it, just as his father drove the big car. He came to a little bridge over a stream and stopped for a moment to get out of the car and lean over the side of the bridge to see if there were any fish in the water. There were no fish, but there was something else. There was a little lamb struggling to get out of the stream. There's a lamb fallen into the water, said Dick, in surprise. The banks are so steep just here, it must have been a horrid fall. Poor little thing. Whatever can I do to help it? Dick ran down to the side of the stream. He He looked at the water, which was fairly deep. He could see that the lamb would soon drown if he did not get it out, but the banks of the stream were so steep that it would be very difficult indeed to reach the lamb. Dick thought for a moment. No, there was absolutely nothing else to do but to jump right into the water, lift up the lamb, and then try to climb out again. He would get very wet, but it couldn't be helped. So into the water he jumped. Splash! It was nearly up to his waist. The lamb was caught against an old branch that had fallen into the water and become fixed against the bridge. Dick waded to it. He lifted the lamb up gently and put it round his neck, as he had seen the shepherd do when he wanted to carry a lamb and yet keep his hands free. Then he turned to climb out of the stream. It was very difficult. He lifted the lamb off his shoulders first and laid it down on the bank. Then he tried to scramble up the steep slope. At last he managed to climb up, and he bent over the lamb. It could not walk. Dick saw that something had hurt its two front legs. Perhaps they were broken. The lamb lay there looking up at him out of frightened eyes. "You are begging me for mercy," said Dick, "but you needn't. I only want to help you." He put the lamb over his shoulder again, meaning to carry it all the way back to the farm and come back for his car later, but the lamb was well grown and very heavy. Dick knew he couldn't possibly carry it very far. He couldn't walk. So what was he to do? "I know," he said suddenly to the surprised lamb. "You shall be the passenger in my car. I can drive you back easily then." He put the lamb carefully on the seat next to the wheel. Then he climbed into the driving seat and took hold of the wheel. His wet feet found the pedals, and off he went. The lamb lay beside him, feeling more and more surprised, but it trusted this boy with its gentle hands and was no longer quite so afraid. People were most astonished to see a lamb as a passenger in Dick's little car. They turned and stared in amazement. "Did you see that?" they said to one another. "That boy had a lamb in his car." "Oh dear," said Dick to himself as he pedalled along. "I've got to go and see that cross old shepherd now. I can't just put the lamb into the field and hope he will see it, because he might notice it was hurt, and it does need its legs amended, but surely he would notice by the evening. Shall I just put the lamb through a hole in the hedge and leave it there without saying anything?" Dick looked at the lamb. It looked back at him. It had a little black nose and wide, staring eyes. Dick liked it very much, and he suddenly knew quite certainly that he couldn't push the little creature through the hedge and leave it. He must take it to the shepherd, even though he might be shouted at. He stopped his car outside the gate. He took the lamb in his arms, opened the gate, shut it behind him, and walked over the field towards the shepherd's hut. The sheep set up a great bang when they saw him, and the old shepherd at once appeared at the door of his hut. When he saw Dick carrying one of the lambs again, he went red with rage. "Didn't I tell you to leave my lambs alone?" he yelled. "Didn't I tell you to get out of my field? You wait till I catch you, you tiresome boy!" But Dick didn't run away. He went on towards the shepherd, his heart beating fast. The shepherd raised his stick as if he was going to beat Dick, but the boy called to him. "Wait, wait! This lamb of yours is hurt. I found it in the stream, and his legs are hurt. It must have slipped out of the field and run away." The shepherd at once took the lamb from Dick. He looked at its legs. "They're broken," he said. "Can you mend them?" asked Dick anxiously. "They'll mend themselves if I see to them now," said the shepherd. "You can help me if you like." "Oh, thank you," said Dick. He followed the shepherd into the hut, and together the two of them gently bound up the little hurt legs. The shepherd made clever wooden splints that he bound fast to each leg. The lamb did not make a sound, but lay quite still, looking up at the two who were caring for it. "You are wet," said the shepherd to Dick. "Yes, I had to jump in the stream to get the lamb," said Dick. "This lamb is heavy," said the shepherd. "Surely you didn't carry it all the way here from the stream?" "No, I couldn't," said Dick. "I brought it along in my little car. It was my passenger, but I was afraid of bringing the lamb to you because you shouted at me this morning and were very cross." "Ah, I didn't know I didn't know then what sort of a boy you were," said the old shepherd. "I get boys in here that break down my hedges and frighten my sheep, so I turn them out of my field. But you could come every day if you like, and you and I will sit here and watch the lambs playing, and I can tell you many a strange tale about lambs and sheep." "Oh, thank you," said Dick. "Now I must go home to my lunch. I'll come again tomorrow." "You come and have lunch with me tomorrow," said the old shepherd. "I'll get my wife to make us a picnic lunch, and we'll talk together. I could do with a boy like you for company sometimes." Dick went home proudly. The cross shepherd wanted him for a friend. No other boy had ever been able to make friends with the old chap, but Dick could go and have lunch with him the next day. Now the two are fast friends, and the lamb is quite better. It frisks up to meet Dick whenever it sees the boy coming along in his car, and it lets him take it for a ride once a week down to the village. It sits beside Dick just like a proper passenger. You should see how everyone stares. 2. The Disobedient Bunny. Once upon a time there was a little bunny called Coo. He was the dearest, softest, prettiest little bunny on all the hillside, and his mother and father were very proud of him. But he was terribly naughty. Nobody could think why, because all his brothers and sisters were very obedient little bunnies, and always did what they were told. "Don't go out on the hillside until the sun has gone," Coo's mother would say to them all. "It isn't safe until then." And they would rub their wet little noses against her soft sides and say, "No, mother, we won't." All except Coo. He wouldn't promise not to do anything, just in case he should find he wanted to do it after all, and his mother would suddenly look around and say, "Where's Coo?" Nobody knew. He had slipped off along the dark little passage and up into the soft, fresh air of the hillside. His mother would fetch him back and scold him, and tell him a big man would come and shoot him, but he didn't seem to care a bit. But one day something happened to Coo, and I'll tell you what it was. That morning, very early, he and his brothers and sisters and mother and father were all sitting on the grass, busily washing themselves. Coo finished first, and he sat up straight on his hind legs and looked at the country which lay all around. He had never been allowed to go any farther than a short distance around about his hole, but now he felt very curious to know what the world was like a bit further off. Away down at the bottom of the hill stood a wood, cool and green in its early summer dress. Coo thought it looked really lovely. "Mother," he said, "may I go down there?" "Good gracious, no. Whatever next?" said his mother in surprise. "Why not, mother? Why can't I go?" he asked. "Because it's too far from our hole," said his mother. "You'd get lost, and then a man would catch you." "What would he do with me?" asked Coo. "He would cook you and eat you," answered his mother. "What does cook mean?" asked Coo, who never ate anything but raw grass. "You'd be put into a big pot with water in, and hung over a fire till you got hotter and hotter and were ready to eat," said his mother, getting tired of his questions. "It's terrible to be cooked, so I've heard. Now it's time to go in, and remember, all of you, never go down to the wood until you are big and strong enough to look after yourselves properly." Now Coo felt quite certain that he was old enough to look after himself, and he longed to know what was down in that lovely, cool-looking wood. How nice it would be to lie there, hidden in the grass all day, instead of being down in our stuffy hole, he thought. And the disobedient bunny waited until no one was looking, then off he went. He scurried down the hillside in the sunshine, his little bobtail gleaming white as snow. At last he came to the wood. It was very cool, very shady, and very green. The grass tasted most delicious. Little shoots of bracken were growing up here and there, and Coo ate those too, and thought how silly his mother was to say he was not to leave his home. "When I've had enough to eat, I'll lie down under that bramble bush," said Coo to himself. "It smells nice, and it will be lovely to sleep in the open air." Soon he had eaten so much that he really couldn't nibble another blade of grass. He wriggled beneath the brambles and found a nice, soft, dry bed for himself. "I wish the others were here," said Coo, suddenly feeling a little bit lonely. "Mother was quite wrong about being caught and cooked. Why, I've not seen anybody at all except bees and butterflies. Caught and cooked indeed." Just at that moment there was a stir and a flutter somewhere nearby, and you'd never guess what the poor little bunny heard someone say. "Cook, Coo! Cook, Coo! Cook, Coo!" Coo could hardly believe his ears. Cook, Coo? Cook him? How dreadful! Somebody must have seen him. Then his mother was right after all. Coo lay still and listened. Okay. There it was again, nearer this time. "Cook, Coo! Cook, Coo!" Coo dashed out from the bramble bush and fled, trembling through the wood. He came to a low hazel bush and hid himself there, but there was somebody else near there, saying the same thing. "Cook, Coo! Cook, Coo!" Off went Coo again, as frightened as could be. But oh dear, The woods seemed to be full of people telling each other to cook coo. First one called it out, then another, and whichever way Coo turned, he heard it. "I don't want to be cooked," he wept. "I'm only a wee bunny. Don't cook me. I want to go home." "Cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo," said somebody in the trees nearby. Then Coo suddenly saw the hillside he had scampered down early in the day. What a piece of luck! Up he went, faster than he had ever scampered before, longing to reach home before anyone could cook him, and behind him he heard cuckoo, getting fainter and fainter. His mother was waiting anxiously beside the hole, looking for her naughty little bunny. She was very glad to see him, and could hardly bear to scold him. She was so happy to have him again. Coo told her all about his dreadful adventure. "They kept calling out to each other to cook me," he said. "Wasn't it horrible of them, Mother? If I hadn't run very fast indeed, they might have cooked me." "Mightn't they? I'll never be disobedient again, never." Coo didn't know what his mother was smiling at. "But I expect you do. Wasn't he a silly little bunny to be frightened by the cuckoos? But still, he was never disobedient again. So his adventure did some good after all." 3. The Easter Chickens. But first, a sip of drink. My mouth is dry. Oh, OJ, does the body good. Tommy was staying with Auntie Susan and Uncle Ben at the farm for Easter. Mummy and Daddy had gone away for a holiday by themselves, and Tommy was sorry because he did so like Easter at home. There were coloured Easter eggs on the breakfast table to eat then, and chocolate ones too, and perhaps a fluffy yellow chick tied to one egg, or a little rabbit. "I don't expect Auntie Susan or Uncle Ben know what a little boy likes at Easter," thought Tommy. "I don't expect they will buy me any eggs at all. I wish I was at home with Mummy and Daddy." Sure enough, when Easter morning came, and Tommy ran downstairs to breakfast, there was no coloured egg for him in his egg cup, only just an ordinary brown egg laid by Henny Penny, the brown hen. Tommy looked to see if there were any chocolate eggs for him, but there wasn't even a very small one. He felt very sad. "Sit down and eat your breakfast, Tommy," said Aunt Susan. "We must get on because I have a lot of things to do today." Auntie Susan always had a lot of things to do. So did Uncle Ben. Perhaps that was why they hadn't remembered his Easter eggs, Tommy thought. He remembered how he had seen a little yellow chick in the sweet shop yesterday down in the village. It was carrying an egg. He would have liked that very much. He wondered if he should ask Auntie Susan if she would buy it for him, but he decided that he mustn't ask for things. She said if he was nice enough, people would always buy him things because they loved him without being asked. I may not have been nice enough, Tommy thought. So instead of being sulky and disappointed, he tried to be extra nice to Auntie Susan, and ate his egg without dropping a single bit of the yellow part on the tablecloth. "Can I go on any errands for you, Auntie Susan?" he asked, when he had finished breakfast. "I think Uncle Ben wants you to go down to the hen coops with him," said Auntie. "I'm coming too." So all three went down to the hen coops. There were 4 of these, with 4 brown hens sitting on 13 eggs each. And do you know, when they came to the first hen coop, some of the eggs had hatched. Yes, and there were 3 yellow chicks running about saying cheep, 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 as loudly as they could. "Oh," said Tommy, delighted, "look at those dear little chicks, Auntie. Do look at them. They are much sweeter than the toy ones I saw in the shop yesterday. And oh, look, they have got something tied to their backs. Whatever are they carrying?" "Look and see," said Uncle Ben with a laugh. So Tommy crouched down and peeped to see what they were carrying. The chicks had gone into the coop with their mother, and it was difficult to see one. At last one of them came out again, and what do you suppose that it had got on his back? A little chocolate egg! Fancy that! "It's carrying an egg, just like the little chick at the sweet shop," cried Tommy. "Oh, who is the egg for, Auntie Susan?" "It's for a nice little boy I know, called Tommy," said Auntie Susan, laughing. "That chick has an egg for me, Tommy, and that one has an egg for you from Uncle Ben, and the third one has an egg from Mummy and Daddy. It came for you yesterday, and we kept it till Easter Day. Then, when the chicks hatched out, we thought you would like to have eggs and chicks together. Really proper Easter chicks this time." "Auntie, are the yellow chicks for me as well? Oh, I am so pleased." Uncle Ben caught the chicks and took off the chocolate eggs for Tommy. The little boy cuddled the soft, cheeping chicks. Their little bodies were so warm. He loved the tiny creatures, and they were his very own. "Will they grow into hens and lay me eggs?" he asked. "Oh yes," said Auntie Susan. "You shall take them home with you next week when you go. Real, live Easter chicks, Tommy, for your very own." "This is the nicest Easter I've ever had," said Tommy, "and I thought it wasn't going to be. What will Mummy say when I take home my Easter chicks?" Tommy still has his chicks, but they are growing into brown hens now, and will soon lay him eggs, one for his own breakfast each morning, one for his mummy, and one for his daddy. Don't you think he is lucky? 4. Mr. Quink's Garden. One fine day, not long ago, Mr. Brown took his wife and children, Jenny and Tom, for a day out in the country. "It will be a lovely day," said Mr. Brown. "The countryside is beautiful at this time of year. We'll have lots of fun together. Let's hurry up and pack a big picnic." So they made ham and tomato sandwiches and packed them into lunch boxes. They took 2 bottles of homemade lemonade and packed oranges and bananas into a basket with the bottles. They took a large fruit cake and a packet of biscuits, and last of all, they took 4 bars of chocolate and a bag of sweets. It was a lovely day when they set off in the car. The sun shone and the sky was as blue as the bluebells in the woods. Birds sang in the hedges and the banks were yellow with primroses. The Brown family were happy, sitting and looking at the scenery. They got out of the car at last and walked into the woods. The sun was so hot that they were glad of the shade. Tom and Jenny ran on in front, shouting to their mother to look at the bluebells. Mr. and Mrs. Brown carried the bags and basket. "Look for a nice place to sit, Jenny," called Mrs. Brown. Presently they found just the spot. It was the prettiest place in the wood, and, although they did not know it, it was the garden belonging to Mr. Quink, the magical brownie. He lived in the old oak tree under whose branches the Brown family sat. He had a close-fitting door in the trunk of the tree and a small window with a tiny curtain of moss. No one knew he lived there, except the little folk, of course, for Mr. Quink never showed himself to ordinary people. Now Mr. Quink was very proud of his garden, and he worked there every night. There was a tiny stream running through it, and he had planted flowers neatly along each bank. He had arranged cushions of moss so that his friends could sit on them when they came to visit him. He had 3 patches of bluebells, the finest in the wood, and a white bluebell, which is a very lucky flower. Mr. Quink planted honeysuckle in one corner and a nook of violets close by, so that whoever sat there could smell the sweet scent of the hidden violets. Everything in the garden was neat, tidy, and beautiful. No wonder the Browns thought it was lovely. They sat down under the tree and put their basket by their trunk. They didn't know that they were in a brownie's garden, as there was no fence or hedge around it. "Let's have our lunch now," said Mrs. Brown, beginning to unpack the things. Soon they were all munching happily. They drank the lemonade. It was delicious. "Let's put the bottles over there and throw stones at them," said Mr. Brown. "But won't the broken pieces be dangerous?" said Mrs. Brown. "Who for? No one comes here," said Mr. Brown. So they set up the bottles and threw stones at them, and soon the bottles were smashed to bits, and pieces of glass lay all over the ground. Mr. Brown unfolded his newspaper. "I'm going to have a rest," he said. "Run along and play, children." Little by little the lovely garden belonging to Mr. Quink began to look dreadful. The brownie peeped out of his tiny window in the oak tree and saw with dismay what was happening. He saw Mrs. Brown peel oranges for the children and throw the peel on the ground. He saw the children eating bananas and throwing the skins at one another. And he saw Mr. Brown throw empty sweet wrappers under the honeysuckle bush. The Brown family stayed there all afternoon. It was so peaceful, and the birds sang sweetly. They had tea, and then there was time to go home. Mrs. Brown looked around at the mess and couldn't help feeling a bit sorry about it. "Are there any litter bins?" she asked. "Perhaps we ought to clear this mess up." "There aren't any, Mum," said Tom. "This is quite a wild part of the wood. I don't suppose anyone comes here but us. Still, our teacher always tells us not to spoil the country. Don't you think we should take our rubbish back home with us?" "I'm not carrying all that litter back," said Mr. Brown. He was rather a selfish man. "Leave it here. No one will ever know." "Mummy, let's take these bluebells home with us," cried Jenny, "and let's dig up the primroses and violets and some of the moss. We can plant them in our garden at home." So they dug up Mr. Quink's finest primroses, violets, and moss, and picked all his bluebells. And then they found the lucky white bluebell. So they dug it up and put it in the basket too. Then home they went. Mr. Quink opened his front door and crept out. When he saw his beautiful garden scattered with broken glass, orange peel, banana skins, cardboard boxes, empty bags and packets, sweet papers and sheets of newspaper, when he saw his lovely plants gone and his moss spoilt, he sat down on a stone and cried big tears. But when he found his white bluebell gone, he was very angry. He called a meeting of all the brownies in the wood, and they came to see his spoiled garden. Most of them had complaints and grumbles too. Some people left all their horrible paper bags in my field the other day, said Nod, an old brownie. And some boys threw broken bottles into my stream, and I cut my feet when I paddled there, said Doolin, a small bright-eyed brownie. But these browns are the worst of the lot, said Mr. Quink fiercely. Look at this mess. Whatever shall I do with it? Well, the browns have a neat little garden, said Hoodle, a sharp-eyed brownie who travelled a good deal. As all this mess belongs to them, why not take it back to them and put it into their own garden? That's a good idea, said all the brownies at once. They don't seem to mind litter and rubbish and mess, so maybe they won't bother about broken bottles and papers and peel in their own garden. I can give them some newspapers I've picked up in my field, said Nod. And I can give them a sackful of broken glass, said Doolin. We'll go tonight and dump everything in the Browns' garden, said everyone. How pleased they will be to get such a nice lot of rubbish back. That night they took their sacks and made their way from the wood, riding on the back of the midnight owl who flies to and from the town. When they got to the Browns' garden, they landed on the grass and opened their sacks. They shook glass all over the neat lawn. They threw newspapers where the wind could blow them around. They scattered paper and boxes and peel and skin here and there. Just as they were going, Mr. Quink stopped and pointed to something. Look, he said, my lucky white bluebell. I'll take that back with me. And see, here's a lupin plant just flowering, said Nod. I ain't got one of those at home, so the Browns took your flowers, Quink. They probably wouldn't mind us taking theirs. I like that lupin. In a few minutes the brownies were digging up all the nicest things in the Browns' garden, and then off they went again on the owl, their sacks empty of rubbish but full of lovely plants. They were delighted. In the morning, when Mr. Brown woke up and looked out of the window, he got such a shock. His garden was a wreck. The plants were gone, the lawn was scattered with broken glass, and all kinds of rubbish blew about or lay on the flower beds. Just look at that, said Mr. Brown fiercely. Now who's done that? I should like to know. Mrs. Brown jumped out of bed and gazed at the dreadful garden. Tears came into her eyes, for she loved her little garden. Oh, how could anyone be so horrid, she said. Tom and Jenny were angry too. What a terrible mess, said Jenny. Why don't people clear up their little litter properly instead of throwing it into our garden? Mr. Brown told the policeman, who wrote a lot of things down in his notebook, and said he would keep a watch on the garden and see it didn't happen again. And Tom and Jenny spent the whole morning clearing up the mess and making the garden neat. Mr. Brown had to buy more plants in place of the ones that had gone, and he was very angry about it. The next night, although and that was my clock. The next night, although the policeman watched carefully, someone he didn't see came and emptied all sorts of rubbish in the Browns' garden again. It was most extraordinary, because although the policeman saw the rubbish being thrown about the garden, he couldn't see who was throwing it. The brownies were invisible to him, for he didn't believe in fairies. He was frightened and ran all the way back to the police station. And do you know, the magical brownies still come every other night or so and give to the Browns all the rubbish that people leave in the countryside. Their garden is a dreadful sight, and they can't do anything about it. In fact, Jenny is beginning to wonder if it can be the little folk who are doing it, and she wishes her family hadn't been so untidy in the wood that day. I shall put up a notice to say we're sorry and won't spoil the country again, said Jenny. Then the little folk will stop bringing us rubbish. So she is going to do that tonight, and then the brownies will have to choose someone else's garden. I hope it won't be yours. But I'm sure you are not like the Browns, are you? You know how to behave when you go to the country, so your garden will be safe. 5. Slow Coach Sammy. Slow Coach Sammy belonged to a family of magical brownies, and you can guess why he had such a funny name. He was such a slow coach. He was last in everything, and his mother, Mrs. Trotabout, got quite cross with him. "You're always last, Sammy," she said. "I call the others and they come running at once, but you stay behind and make me feel so cross." Poor old Slowcoach Sammy. He missed the bus when he went shopping. He missed the train when Mrs. Trotabout took the family to see Aunt Twinkle. He even missed the elephant when he went to the zoo. So he couldn't have his ride. One day his mother called to all her family. "Come with me. I want you to do some gardening. I have lettuce and mustard and cress seeds, and we shall plant them all in our garden so that we shall have plenty to eat in the summer." Tickle came running. Humps rushed up. Jinky came round the corner at top speed. Ricky arrived panting, but Slowcoach Sammy wasn't to be seen as usual. "He's watching a spider making its web at the front gate," said Tickle. "Sammy, Sammy, Sammy! Hurry up or you won't have time to do any gardening," cried Mrs. Trotabout. "I've only 20 minutes to spare to help you all plant your seeds." But Slowcoach Sammy didn't hurry. He watched the spider till she had finished her web. Then he watched a worm wriggling out of a hole. Then he watched a bird flying right up into the sky. At last he got to his mother and his brothers and sisters. But they had finished their gardening and were picking up their spades to put them back into the shed. "What a slow coach you are, Sammy," said Mrs. Trotabout. "I called you ages ago. Now we have finished and all the seeds are planted." "I want to plant some seeds too," said Sammy. "Well, you can't. The others have planted them all. There they are, neatly labelled in rows," said his mother, waving her spade to the garden beds. "I do want to plant some seeds," wept Sammy. "I want some plants for my own too. I do want to plant some seeds." "It's no use making that noise," said his mother. "You should have come when you were called. There are no more seeds at all." Sammy went off to cry in the playroom. He hunted in the cupboard to see if there were any packets of seeds left, and at last he came to a little packet that rattled when he shook it. He opened it. Inside lay a great many tiny coloured round things. "Seeds," said Slowcoach Sammy, delighted. "Seeds that everybody else has forgotten. I'll go and plant them straight away, and won't the others look blue when they have seen that I've got seeds coming up after all?" Well, if Sammy had looked closely at that packet, he would have seen that they were tiny beads belonging to his sister Jinky. But he didn't. He just hurried out to plant them. He made little holes along his garden bed, and shook the beads inside. He covered them up well. He watered them and patted down the ground nicely. He was very pleased with himself. "Then they can call me Slowcoach all they like, but they'll be surprised when they see how many nicer seeds They can call me Slowcoach all they like, but they'll be surprised when they see how much nicer my seeds are than theirs," said Sammy to himself. "My word, with seeds coloured as brightly as that, I ought to have flowers all colours of the rainbow." Well, the other seeds began to come up, showing a green mist in the beds. But Slowcoach Sammy didn't peep through at all. He went out to look 20 times a day, but it wasn't any use. He didn't see a single green head coming through the soft brown earth. He was so disappointed. The seeds of the others grew and grew, but Sammy's didn't come up at all. I'm not really surprised. Are you? Mrs. Trotabout was sorry to see Sammy so unhappy about his seeds. He had told her that he had found a forgotten packet in the cupboard, and she thought they were mustard and cress or lettuce. She couldn't think why they didn't come up. "I shall dig them up and see what's the matter with them," said Slowcoach Sammy to the others. "Maybe they are slowcoaches, just like you," said Jinky. They all came with him and watched him dig up his bed. He turned up heaps of the little round coloured things and picked them out of the earth. "Just look," he said. "They haven't put out any root or shoot or bud or leaf. What bad seeds they are." Then the others began to laugh. How they laughed! "What's the matter?" asked Sammy in surprise. "Do you think my seeds are so funny?" "Yes, we do," laughed Ricky. What did you expect to grow from those seeds, Sammy? Necklace flowers and bracelet buds? They are tiny little beads." Poor Slowcoach Sammy. He stood and stared at his bead seeds, and tears trickled down his red cheeks. No wonder they wouldn't grow. He had planted beads. "Never mind, Sammy, you can share my lettuces," said kind Jinky. "It's not the same to share," said Sammy. "I want seeds of my own." "Then you mustn't be such a little slowcoach next time," said his mother. "We'll try and help you not to be." And what do you think his family say to him when they see Sammy being slow? They say, "Hi, Sammy, your beads will never grow unless you hurry up." Then my goodness, how he hurries and scurries. 6. They can't catch Brewer Rabbit. "You know," said Brewer Fox to Brewer Wolf, It's just about time we caught Brer Rabbit, Brer Wolf. He's getting so uppity these days, he'll soon be ordering us about. Well, let's catch him then, said Brer Wolf. We'll think of a plan. Shall we set a trap for him? I've got a better idea than that, said Brer Fox. We'll catch him in a net. How can we do that? Said Brer Wolf. He'll see a net. Now you listen, said Brer Fox. We'll have a hunting party, see? You can bring a net to catch butterflies and I'll bring one to catch fish. And we'll tell Brer Rabbit to bring a net too and catch what he likes. We'll say that we'll bring the lunch. He needn't bother to bring any. And when he's not looking, we'll clap our nets down over him. And that will be the end of old Brer Rabbit, said Brer Wolf, pleased. A mighty fine idea, Brer Fox. Well, the two of them told Brer Rabbit about their hunting party, and Brer Rabbit listened with both his ears. You bring your net and catch what you like, said Brer Fox. We'll bring ours too. And don't you bother about any food, Brer Rabbit. We'll bring that and we'll share it with you. Well, that's mighty kind of you, said Brer Rabbit. I'll be pleased to come. And don't forget I like carrot sandwiches. And don't forget I like carrot sandwiches, will you? Now, when the day for the hunting party came, Brer Rabbit made up his mind he'd be along at the meeting place quite early. It seemed a bit funny that Brer Fox and Brer Wolf should be so friendly with him all of a sudden, so off he went early and crawled under a bush to wait, taking his net with him. Presently along came Brer Fox and Brer Wolf, each with most enormous nets. Hey-yo, Brer Fox, said Brer Wolf. My, you ought to be able to catch old Brer Rabbit in that. That net of yours is big enough to catch an elephant. And yours is strong enough to catch a tiger, said Brer Fox. Now, we must each pretend to be looking for fish or for butterflies as soon as we see old Brer Rabbit coming. You wait about by those flowers, and I'll sit down at the stream. He's late. Oh, thought Brer Rabbit to himself. I'm late, am I? It's a good thing I was early, it seems to me. Did you bring a picnic lunch? Called Brer Wolf to Brer Fox. Yes, I'll put it down here, shouted back Brer Fox, and he put down a nice fat basket of food, not far from Brer Rabbit's bush. The smell of it reached Brer Rabbit's nose, and it was very good. Brer Wolf danced about among the flowers with his net, and Brer Fox swished about in the stream with his. They both kept an eye open for Brer Rabbit, but he didn't come, and he didn't come. He was looking through a hole in his bush at that picnic basket and wishing he could feast on what was inside it. He waited till Brer Fox and Brer Wolf were looking the other way, and then he quietly pushed his net out from under the bush, and he put it over the basket. He began to draw it back towards the bush. He soon got it under the bush and opened the basket. My, how good everything smelt. I'll take it home to my family, thought Brer Rabbit. That's what I'll do. So as bold as brass, he crept out from under the bush and shouted at Brer Fox and Brer Wolf. Hey-o, folks! Having a nice party? I hope you'll catch what you want to catch. Brer Fox almost fell into the stream when he heard Brer Rabbit shout. Brer Wolf stepped into some nettles and then out again in a hurry. Where did you come from? Shouted Brer Fox. We've been watching out for you for a long time. We wanted you to go hunting with us. You come here and see what I've caught. I've been hunting under that bush, said Brer Rabbit. You wouldn't believe what I caught. He swung his net around, and Brer Fox suddenly saw that Brer Rabbit has got his picnic basket in it. He gave an angry yell and rushed at him. Brer Rabbit danced away. You're a thief, Brer Rabbit, cried Brer Fox. Yes, that's what you are. You just came to steal our lunch. You didn't come here to catch anything. I did, shouted Brer Rabbit, dancing around a bush and making Brer Fox come after him with his net. Well, you tell me what you came to catch then, yelled Brer Fox. You just tell me. Brer Rabbit ran to the hedge and waved his net at Brer Fox. You go and catch fish, Brer Fox, and leave me to catch what I want to catch. What are you going to catch? You tell me that, shouted Brer Fox. Brer Rabbit leapt right over the hedge. A bus was rumbling up the lane. Brer Rabbit put out his hand and stopped it. Hey-o, Brer Fox, he called, as he hopped on to the step. I'm catching the bus. That's what I'm catching. The bus. And off he went with the picnic basket in his net, laughing so much that he could hardly put his hand into his pocket to pay for the fare. And that will conclude today's episode of Springtime Stories. Yes, I hope you all have enjoyed it. I hope you all are relaxed, and more importantly, I hope you have drifted off into a nice, deep sleep. Yes. I will see you next time with more stories from Enid Blyton's Springtime Stories. Until then, good night. Good night. Good night.